Students often struggle with creating a nice scale for a problem. So for example, suppose you've been given the table of values that you can see over here. It might be clear cut to you how you want to break down your chart, but for many students, this can be a difficulty. So the first thing I want to point out is that the x values are these values right here. And we cannot do the following. We cannot simply put those numbers here. The issue with that is that even if I did start this at 0, then this space is 6. This space goes from 6 to 15, so it's 9. This space goes from 15 to 21, so it's 6 again. We're not getting consistent spacing. The other issue with this method is that it's not as spread out as maybe it could possibly be. So the way I handle this instead is I take a look at my biggest x value, which is really step 2, and I count the number of hatch marks on the graph, which is step 1. And I use those two numbers to decide what my scale should be. So for my x-axis, I have, starting at 0, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hatch marks. So my step 1 is that I have 10 hatch marks. And my step 2 is I identify the biggest number needed, which for my x values is 32. For my step 3, I divide that number by the number of hatch marks. And this does not typically give me a very pretty number. So now I go on to step 4, which is to round that number up to something pretty. So this, even though I still call this rounding, I'm not following the rounding conventions. I'm going up, and I'm not even going up to the next number. I'm going to go up to something where it's very easy. So sometimes we go by 2s or 5s or 10s. In this case, I would go up by 5s because, you know, even though I could round 3.2 up to 4, 5's a little easier. So I'm going to make this 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. And I go at least past the number that's the largest number, which was 32. I'm also going to, at this time, label that this is units sold, just so I don't forget. Now notice the 6 isn't specifically on there, but I know basically where it is. It's like right around here. 15 is on there. 21, you know, basically I know where it is. So I'm not trying to get my exact numbers from the X column on this chart. I'm trying to get a nice steady spacing of numbers that reaches my largest number. Let's do the same thing for the y-axis. Again, I will find I have 10 hatch marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not always going to be true, but in this case it is the case. So I have 10 hatch marks. My largest y value in my y column is 420. So I'm going to take my 420 and I'm going to divide by that 10, and that gives me 42. But I don't want to go up by 42s because it takes a lot of mental effort. So my step 4 is to take that 42 and round it up to something pretty, and something pretty in this case would be 50s. 50 is easy to go up by. 50, 100, 150, 200, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I start at 0 and I go up by 50s, and I keep doing this labeling until I pass that largest value that I wanted to include. And this is also a good time to label the meaning. So now that I have my nice scale on the x-axis and the y-axis, I get to plot my points. So let's see, 6, 150 would be just past the 5 and right up here. 15, 300 would be out at 15 and up to 300. 2158 would be just past the 20 and not up very high, just past the 50. And 32, 420 would be a little bit past the 30, and then up here at 420, which would be ballpark there. So there's a lot of ballparking when it comes to these points. And sometimes people label them all. It can get rather cluttered, so I definitely label points that I have some reason to think of as significant. But otherwise, if I have this table of values over here, I don't really need to also label everything. One thing I want to point out is that when you go and take a look at this section in the book, it's a good idea to use two different colors to create the two graphs when you get to number 15. And don't connect the dots until question 18. And so you are going to ultimately connect the dots on those, and the two colors will help you see which dots go with which graph.